Hi guys, it's Reagan and welcome back to another video. Today's video is going to be a rather large unboxing book haul, a true classic occurrence on this channel. Truth be told, I don't feel bad at all because there have been so many incredible releases, and I've also been diving into a lot of series. So I've been needing to buy all of the books in said series, you know what I mean? But with that in mind, there is a lot to show off. So without further ado, let's go ahead and dive right in, starting of course with my July Book of the Month selects, who I'm also working with for this video. I am so pumped about my July selects from Book of the Month this month. In fact, I plan on reading one of the books in this box very soon. It's on my July TBR, so needless to say, when I saw I could get it for such a good price, I was thrilled. Plastic blue box. Before we dive into the books themselves, first a bit more about Book of the Month. If you're not familiar, Book of the Month is an online bookish subscription service. Every single month they curate a selection of books from a variety of different authors and voices in the community. There are always new releases, they're always hardcover, and they're sent directly to your door. Now, which is super exciting, alongside being able to select a hardcover, you can also toggle to select an audiobook instead, which I think is amazing. We all know how much I love a puzzle audiobook moment. I love the expansion of this. Book of the Month is super easy to skip if you're not interested in any of the titles for the month, and they often also have incredible add-on titles for you to select from as well. I of course have an offer code. If you use the code Peruse Project, you're able to get your first book for only $9.99, which is amazing. But without further ado, let's dive into the two books I picked for the month of July. As I said, the first book I'm going to show off, I am reading right away. I'm super excited to get to it. It's one of my most anticipated fantasy releases of the year, so to get it for such a good deal, we simply love to see. And the book I'm talking about is Immortal Longings by Chloe Gong. This is Chloe Gong's adult fantasy debut, and I'm super excited to get to it. One, because I'm really curious about how she's going to tackle this slightly different genre than she normally writes in, which is YA fantasy, and also the synopsis of this is one that really intrigues me. This is another fantastical Shakespearean retelling, but this time with Antony and Cleopatra versus Romeo and Juliet, which we had with her previous series. I love that she's inspired by Shakespeare and kind of bringing it to whole new places and adding a really fun plot twist to the whole thing. I love Shakespeare, but I think kind of encountering those classic stories in a fantasy world is just super cool. And this is actually a trial-based fantasy story. Basically, in the capital city of this fantasy world, every year thousands flock to partake and also watch a set of trials where everyone sort of risks their life, but the winner wins unimaginable riches. We follow two POV characters who are both entering these trials for different reasons. One is looking for revenge, the other is looking for a way to help heal their childhood love. They meet and they also form an unlikely alliance with one another as they go about these trials. Again, I always find trial elements to just be a really intriguing plot setup for a fantasy story. It's always fast-paced and there's a lot of action. As I've mentioned quite a few times, I'm really curious to see Chloe Gong writing an adult fantasy novel, and I'm really looking forward to picking this book up this month. And the other book I picked up was one I definitely just succumbed to the hype, and that is The Only One Left by Riley Sager. Riley Sager is like everywhere when it comes to horror, so again, to see her new release at such a great price, I knew I needed to have it. I'm also obsessed with this cover, the text, the old school like horror book and movie sort of aesthetic reference. I love everything about it. The colorway, like I could stare at this cover literally all day. This book particularly calls out to me because while I don't tend to read a lot of horror, this is a Gothic horror, and I love Gothic horror stories. That is like a subgenre of horror that I can never get enough of. It's always my favorite. I love the atmosphere and sort of the creepy element that tend to occur within a Gothic horror story. This book is set in Maine, and we basically follow a young caretaker who is assigned to take care of a woman who was accused of massacring her entire family decades earlier. Basically, in 1929, there was a chilling series of murders that basically killed the majority of one family besides one individual, and while they could never prove that she did the murders, the town and sort of everyone who became aware of this crime blamed her for it. There's even like a childhood rhyme that's centering her. Now, many decades later, she is much older, she's also mute, and a caretaker has come to kind of take care of her in her last days. And he begins to like communicate with her, and I also think they might be writing down the story of what happened. I am so curious about this. As I mentioned, I love a Gothic horror. I love a creepy house story, and I feel like this could be really, really interesting. And I also love that it's taking place over a longer span of time. So curious about this one. I've never read a Riley Sager book, but this particular synopsis really calls out to me and might be the place I feel like would be best to start. Alrighty guys, those are my 2 July Book of the Month selects. Again, I'll have a link down below to their website as well as my offer code if y'all want to learn more. But without further ado, let's go ahead and dive back into the rest of the books in this book haul, because there are many. Starting off with a very highly hyped release, I did get myself a copy of Fourth Wing by Rebecca Yarros. I don't have a physical copy of this book to show off because it's quite literally impossible to locate anywhere, at least for a few months down the line anyway, but I want to read this book now. This book is on my July TBR. I'm very curious to get to it and vlog the experience and let y'all know if I think this book is worth the hype or not. But this book is quite literally everywhere. It has an insanely high rating on Goodreads, I think like a 4.21. This is said to be a romantasy-leaning fantasy tale that has dragons. I usually don't read a lot of dragon fantasy, but I have read some in the past that I've really enjoyed, particularly Fireborn. This story follows our main character who is very determined to just kind of live a quiet life in existence as a historian and a scribe, but her mother, who also happens to be the general of the army, has other ideas for her and pulls her in to this sort of training program and competition to become a dragon rider. This dragon rider group is a very intense situation, not only because the training is intense, but also the amount of dragons available to become a dragon rider are very limited. So everyone's competing against each other. From here, I believe like action, drama, romance ensues. I'm curious about this. Again, it's just simply a book I've seen everywhere. I grabbed the ebook because, as I mentioned, I can't find a physical copy, but I still wanted to haul it because I bought it. I spent my money on this book, and we're going to be reading it very soon. Alrighty, moving on to my first package. Everything kind of came in envelopes recently. I'm a little worried about damage, but we're just going to see together if everything has made it. So I have 3 books in here. The first book I have to show off is The Wolf by Leah Carew. This book sounds so intriguing to me. It's definitely, I feel like, a more underrated fantasy series. I haven't heard too many people talk about this except a few fantasy reviewers, but when I looked into it, it sounded so interesting to me, and their excitement about this book honestly hooked me. This seems to be a military and war-centered fantasy story, and basically it's about 2 different groups of people who are now in conflict with one another. The first is the group that lives in the north on the other side of this place called the Black River. Here lives an ancient race of people, and their lives are kept not in years but instead centuries. They live a very long time. Therefore, kind of how they move through their society is very, very different because they have time. They revel in the wilderness, and they like to keep to themselves and away from the people who live in the South. Those that live in the South are known for their cunning and progress. They're also more likely to live in the moment as their lives are much, much shorter. They also have a strong desire for wealth and power. And one day they decide to spark war with those of the North as they spill over the banks of the Black River, and so sparks the beginning of this novel. I'm just very curious about this. It's said to be full of like dark conspiracy, larger than life characters, a very intense plot line. I enjoy like war military style stories, especially if they center in on a few specific characters. I am always looking for a new fantasy series to check out. It's quite literally a problem I have. So I'm so excited to add this to my shelf and my collection. I feel like this could be a good fall winter read. The next book I picked up, I'm honestly a little embarrassed because I had never even heard of it, and it's by one of my favorite authors, and that is Certain Dark Things by Silvia Moreno Garcia. This book I would say is like just shy of being a novella, and it's almost the length of like a typical novel. I think it's about 250 or so pages, but this is said to be a compulsive neo-noir style story centering vampire lore. Yes, Silvia Moreno Garcia has written a vampire story, and I did not know about it. How did this happen? This book is set in Mexico City, which is described as an oasis in a sea of vampires in this world. In it, we're introduced to first our main character, Domingo, who is a lonely, trash-collecting street kid who's just trying to survive the heavily policed streets of the city. Till one day, he runs into a jaded vampire on the run who is named Atil, and she basically comes from a long line of Aztec vampires, and she she's basically being hunted down for a variety of reasons. They form like an unlikely alliance, and I think they begin to escape together. This is said to be like a little bit heartwarming, but still dark, and personally speaking, I think this author can write such fantastic characters with really complex dynamics. I love that this is kind of a dark vampire-leaning tale. I'm so curious about it. I feel like this could be a great fall read or an anytime read if I'm being honest. I just love this author's writing so much, and I also love that this feels kind of like a reimagined version of what we typically get when we think of vampires, and I'm so excited to read and find out how this book unfurls. And the last book in this package is Retribution Falls by Chris Wooding. I came across this book as a recommendation on TikTok, and it honestly intrigued me right away, and I'd never heard of it before, which I also was really curious by. And the setup and the synopsis of this book really does sound like something I'm going to enjoy. The basic premise is we're following a motley crew of individuals who all live and work on this airship. They're brought there due to a variety of circumstances. They're all basically hiding things from their past, hoping to kind of move on from that. A perfect situation to create a delightful found family situation. The captain of this airship is named Darian Frey, and air piracy is something he's never really thought about attempting, but one day when he's offered a job to basically steal what seems like a very easy target of a chest full of very valuable items, he couldn't pass it up as an opportunity to help him and his crew like possibly take on a new life. But unfortunately for him and everyone on this ship, the job goes horribly wrong. Now they find themselves like the most wanted individuals in the realm. This is said to be an interesting mix of sci-fi and fantasy. Again, I love a found family, unlikely crew of people having to work together. I feel like this is going to have a lot of humor, a lot of fun, a lot of heart, and a really intense plot. Who doesn't love sky pirates? I definitely love sky pirates. The next book I picked up is Happy Place by Emily Henry. This is Emily Henry's newest release. I have read Beach Read by her and really enjoyed it. I have not read all of Emily Henry's books. I'm a little bit behind, but there was something about this one in particular that really called out to me, and I also found it at a really good price at Costco, which is a win all around. This book is a second chance romance, which sometimes I love, sometimes I don't, but the setup of this one really calls out to me. In it, we're following our main characters, Harriet and Wynne, and they have been together since college. Their friends viewed them as the perfect couple. They went together like salt and pepper, honey and tea, you get the idea, until all of a sudden they stopped getting together, and they've actually been broken up for the past 5 months. However, though, they find themselves lying through their teeth as they are going on their friend's annual friend trip at the cottage that they always travel to in Maine. Usually this is a week that they all relish in, eating all of the food they can, hanging out and making new memories. But because no one knows that they have broken up, they constantly kind of have to pretend like nothing is wrong, and they're also ignoring how desperately they still want to be with each other. This book sounds like it could be really emotional. I like that it's really centering a relationship that has a lot of history and a lot of complexity. I also love that this book is set in Maine and surrounded by a group of friends. I feel like this could have a really strong ensemble. I don't know, I feel like Emily Henry really balances a lot of emotional elements to her otherwise really fun and often a little bit steamy contemporary romances. I like the balance of both of those things quite a bit. I also really want to read Book Lovers by her, so one Emily Henry book at a time, but I really am excited about this, and I feel like it's gonna make me cry, if I'm being honest. Alrighty, next book on the list we have to open up. These are some of my favorite packages to open. It's just always so satisfying. Oh my gosh, okay, I wasn't expecting this book. This book was sent to me from the publisher, and I am thrilled. The book that was in that package is The Weaver and the Witch Queen by Genevieve Gornichek. I love this author. This particular release is one of my most anticipated releases of the year, so to have it even just a little bit early, it makes me feel so happy and so grateful. This is the same author who wrote The Witch's Heart, which I read a few years ago and really enjoyed. Her writing style is so stunningly lyrical, and I also feel like she brings folklore and history to life in a way that is so unique and immersive. She keeps all the weird elements of folklore, which you should expect, while still humanizing everything, and I feel like this balance is a difficult one to strike up. This book is set during the Viking Age, and we follow the lives of two women who become intertwined with each other. One woman is desperate to save her sister, and the other is an accused witch destined to become the Queen of Norway. And I believe we follow the relationship and the bond of these two women through a rather significant portion of time in their life. First, we meet them as they meet meet as young children where they could not be more different, but they still strike up an unlikely friendship, finding respite and comfort in the relationship that they have with one another. And then we follow them through time as fate and destiny sort of take them in different directions. Their fate is still seemingly very much intertwined. It says their bonds will be tested in ways they never could have foreseen in this deeply moving novel of magic, history, and sworn sisterhood. I can't wait. I already know this author's writing is delicious. This sounds like it's going to be very intense, and I just feel like it's going to be full of so many things I love. All right, next package, another satisfying one to open. Oh, still good. Oh yes, another very anticipated release. Okay, this one is also super exciting. The book is The First Bright Thing by J.R. Dawson. This is a new fantasy release from Tor that came out very recently as well, and I'm so excited to have it in my hands because, my friends, this is a fantasy circus story. Yes, who doesn't love a circus fantasy setting? I know I do. In this story, we follow our main character, Rin, and Rin is a ringmaster of a circus, and she's also able to teleport to different moments in time just as easily as her wife is able to soar through the air on her trapeze. Rin is basically the ringmaster of a circus, but a special one. It's full of like magical misfits who don't really otherwise have a home anywhere else, but have found a home with each other. This book opens after the events of World War I, and we find Rin and her circus traveling the Midwest as they're basically offering one single night of enchantment to cities across this area of land. However, though, as the world seemingly is heating up once again to go back to war, there is also a danger that is beginning to surround Rin from all sides once again. Her past is seemingly bubbling up, as well as a competing circus appears out of nowhere. I'm so curious about this. I love a mesmerizing, dark, beautifully written fantasy tale centered in a circus. It's such an interesting setting for a story to take place. I also think the historical time period, as well as a high chance that this book very much centers found family, also very much calls out to me. Another very highly anticipated release that is officially out and in my hands. Alrighty, moving on to the next package. Oh yes, went on a bit of a Silvia Moreno Garcia, like I need to buy all of her books that I don't own run in the past couple of weeks. So the next book I have to show off is Mexican Gothic, one of the few books I have not read or owned yet by this author, but I also feel like will be a perfect one for the fall season. It's no secret, as I've already mentioned in this video, I love Gothic horror stories, and this is that. And I also believe it's a haunted house story, which is again one of my favorite subgenres of horror. The story follows our main character Nomi, who is a glamorous socialite. Her days are filled usually with gatherings, her nights filled with beautiful parties. She is like the belle of the ball, if you will, until one day she receives a frantic letter from one of her very close cousins begging her to come to her new place of residence after she has recently gotten married. Concerned and obviously wanting to help her cousin, she travels to this remote mountain estate to see what is going on. There she finds a very brooding and interesting new husband of her cousin, also a house that appears to be eroding after this once illustrious family's wealth has begun to decay. She also meets all different types of other family members, but more concerning is her dreams begin to be haunted apparently by this estate itself. Again, a dark Gothic haunted house tale. I love it. I hope it's melodramatic. I hope it's intense. I hope it's page turning. I already know it's going to be all of those things, and I truly cannot wait. Next package, they're all the same. So the next book I picked up is Leviathan Falls by James S.A. Corey. This is the 9th book to the Expand series. I just thought it made sense to slowly continue to collect the remaining books within the series that I don't own and have not read yet. I'm obviously only on book 6, but my hope is I'm going to be marathoning the rest of the series soon, and I just wanted to continue to build out my collection because I already knew that I was gonna read it, so even though I technically didn't need to get this yet, I just couldn't help myself, you know what I mean? But the Expanse series is a space opera tale following a huge cast of characters, but the main characters I would say are Jim Holden and his crew. In book 1, we're basically introduced to a new reality where humanity has expanded beyond the reaches of Earth and have set up new governments on the moon, Mars, and a series of space stations called the Belt. And now, as governments tend to do, they all kind of hate each other, and there's a lot of tension politically between all of these different different groups of people. At the very beginning of this story, our main character basically stumbles upon a piece of alien technology, which acts as the spark to the conflict that kind of takes over everything that I have read so far. The great thing about this series is the plot continues to balloon, also continually bringing the plot to like new directions, and we also encounter that plot from a lot of different point of views from people who work a huge variety of jobs. I feel like keeping the plot very, very fresh, and I also feel like constantly keeping it engaging and making you turn the pages, which I feel like can be very hard for such a long series. As I've said, I'm personally on book 6, but I just wanted to continue to keep buying these paperbacks so I have them on hand. So I grabbed Leviathan Falls. I can't read the synopsis of book 9 because I am not there yet, but hopefully I'll be there soon. Next book I have to show off was another book that was sent to me, but I'm so excited to have, and that is The Way Home by Peter S. Beagle. And this is the long-awaited like release that kind of brings us back into the world of The Last Unicorn, which I have not read yet, but desperately want to. I also believe I own. The Last Unicorn is a very revered fantasy classic. It's kind of like a must-read that I myself have not read yet, but this is a collection of 2 novellas set within that world. So I'm really excited to have this on hand because I do want to read The Last Unicorn soon, and to have the 2 novellas as well, I feel like it'd be a great reading experience. Alrighty, moving on, we have another package to open. And I believe, if I recall correctly, yes, I am correct, are my June Book of the Month books that I've been saving to show off in a book haul. So you should really appreciate my self-control because I've been wanting to read these. First is a recent fantasy release that I feel like I've been seeing everywhere, and that is Ink Blood Sister Scribe by Emily Torres. And this is said to be a spellbinding debut novel following 2 estranged half-sisters as they have to come back into each other's lives with the goal of protecting and guarding their family's like magical library, which has been a part of their family legacy for generations. For generations, the family of Joanna and Esther have been tasked with protecting a set of magical tomes which house a lot of power that must kind of be like prevented from getting out. You can basically read these books and learn to walk through walls or control the elements. You sort of get the idea. However, though, this family legacy has resulted in both of these sisters to actually be estranged from one another, with one basically becoming a recluse in the family home guarding the books, and the other having to flee to Antarctica to prevent having the same fate as her mother. However, though, after their father tragically and very suddenly dies after reading a book that neither of them have seen before, they kind of come crashing back into each other's lives, having to work together to save and protect their family legacy. But I also think like dive a bit more into the secrets of it. I love the setup and concept of this. First off, a magical library to be explored, say no more. I also love that this is going to be centering family and clearly a very complex sister relationship. That is something I personally really enjoy reading. I've heard excellent things about this so far, and I'm just really excited to have it in my hands. I feel like this could just be like a spellbinding read, you know what I mean? And the other book I grabbed sounds so interesting, like heartwarming, but also like a little bit of a thriller story, and that book is The Wishing Game by Meg Schaefer. This has a very unique premise, and honestly, I am so sold. And in the story, we follow our main character, Lucy, and Lucy knows better than anyone what it's like to grow up in a childhood marked by loneliness and neglect. Personally, she found solace in reading books, particularly this one like mystery series called The Clock Islands. Lucy shares this love for reading with her young students as she now works as a teaching aide. She especially loves sharing it with this young boy named Christopher, who's in her class, who she dreams of one day adopting if she's able to produce the necessary funds, as the adoption process is unfortunately incredibly pricey. But Lucy's fortune begins to change when a very unexpected competition and opportunity enters into her life. Basically, the author of the Clock series, which was a very popular best-selling series, has come out of his like reclusive retirement, announces that he's actually written one final book, and there's only one singular copy, and he's hosting a competition on his island where people can compete to win this singular copy. Obviously, the person who wins will likely be able to have a lot of fame and fortune to change their life forever. And Lucy is selected for this competition. We follow her as she goes there, and she has to compete with a lot of backstabbing individuals, as well as a very grumpy and handsome person named Hugo, who also was selected for this competition. It sounds cute, it sounds heartwarming, it sounds like a book that I feel like will just be like a breeze and really fun to read. I love the setup of it. It's a very unusual like premise, but I feel like it's going to work, and I just want something that will like make my heart smile, you know? Promise we are in the home stretch. I know, as I said, I bought a lot of books this month. Speaking of heartwarming stories, the next book I picked up I feel like will be along that vein as well, and I'm really so much in a fall mood right now that I've just been craving like cozy fall reads, and I'm hoping this will be that. The book I have to show off is The House Witch. The cover alone is speaking to me immensely. And the tagline of this book is a heartwarming and humorous blend of fantasy, romance, and mystery, featuring a witch with domestic powers and the royal household he serves dinner? This story follows our main character Finley, and he is a witch, but he's also now working as the royal cook within the palace, where he's just truly trying to keep his head down. He's trying to keep his powers hidden, and he's just trying to concoct some truly delicious meals. However, though, it's hard to keep his powers secret, especially because he has a familiar that kind of follows him around as well, and before he knows it, he's like wrapped up in a lot of like court and political intrigue. He's facing off knights and protecting the pregnant queen, and also his love life is getting a bit more complicated as people from his past begin to show up. This just sounds really delightful. I've seen really positive reviews of this online, and I've honestly just been craving, as I've mentioned, like a cozy and calming read, and this just sounded like a lot of fun. I also just love the cover. It's just, I want to read this and just be like a cook inside a castle. Need I say more? Alrighty friends, it's time to open up the last book of the video. Honestly, in some ways, I might have saved the best for last. Who knows? And the book I have to show off is A Long Way to a Small Angry Planet by Becky Chambers. Ever since I read A Song for the Wild Built by this author, I knew I needed to go backwards and read all of her other works because I loved that book so much, from the characters to the writing to the heartwarming humor, but also the intricate and interesting like sci-fi setting. I just feel like Becky Chambers could catapult herself to like as one of my favorite authors of all time. Obviously, this book is like beloved, very well known. I'm very late to the party reading it, but I'm so excited to finally have it in my hands to check it out for myself. When our main character, Rosemary Harper, joins the crew of Wayfarer, she isn't expecting much, but that is kind of also what she was looking for. A small, patched up ship has definitely seen better days, also offers her the opportunity to have everything that she could possibly want. One, the ability to explore the far reaches of the galaxy and also hopefully create a home for herself. What she wasn't expecting was the motley crew which makes up the Wayfarer ship. Basically, everyone is unique and rambunctious in a way that she wasn't expecting, but she quickly settles in and begins to form relationships with everyone. Everything is sort of turned upside down for Rosemary when the crew is offered an opportunity of a lifetime, and that is a job to tunnel through wormholes to far-reaching planets, which would provide the crew with a lot of money, more cash than they would see in years, and offer them a whole new level of security. But this job is dangerous, which is not really what Rosemary was signing up for. She was looking for a safe and calm place to spend out the next couple of years. But this is a journey through the galaxy, and she does it with her crew, and I'm so curious about this. I feel like this is just going to be funny and endearing, full of lovable, likable characters with a really interesting sci-fi setting. I love a motley crew. I love a journey tale, a space quest, a fantasy quest, any type of situation where people are moving through space in any way, I'm interested in, and I can't wait to read this book. Alrighty guys, that is my giant stack of books that I have collected over the course of this past month. I hope you guys enjoyed this video, and I will see you soon with another one soon. Goodbye!